Chapter 12. To Altar Nun. She had fallen asleep where she lay, without undressing, and her first conscious thought was that the storm had returned. She was awake immediately, and she waited for the sound that had woken her to come again. It came in a moment, a handful of earth thrown against the window from the yard outside. It was Jem Merlin standing below in the yard. He whispered up to her, "Come down to the door here and open it for me." She shook her head. "I can't. I'm locked in my room." He looked back at her, confused, and examined the house as if it might offer some solution of its own. He ran his hand along the wall, feeling for old nails that might once have been used for training climbing plants and would now give him a foothold of a sort. Swinging himself up to the low roof over the front door, he was able to pull himself up to the level of her window. "I shall have to talk to you here," he said. "Come closer where I can see you." She knelt on the floor of her room, her face at the window, and they looked at each other without speaking. He looked tired, and his eyes were hollow like those of one who has not slept. There were lines around his mouth that she had not noticed before, and he did not smile. "I'm sorry," he said at last. "I left you alone without excuse at Lanson on Christmas Eve. You can forgive me or not, but the reason for it, that I can't give you. I'm sorry." She was hurt by his manner. His coldness upset her, and she hoped that he could not see the disappointment in her face. He did not even ask how she had returned that night. "Why are you locked in your room?" Her voice was flat and dull when she replied, "My uncle fears that I may wander in the passage and discover his secrets." "Where is he?" "He's going to spend the night in the kitchen. He's afraid of something, or someone. The windows and doors are barred, and he has his gun." Jem laughed bitterly. "I don't doubt he's afraid. He'll be even more frightened before many hours have passed, I can tell you that. I came here to see him, but if he is sitting there with a gun across his knee, I shall come again tomorrow, when the shadows have gone." "Tomorrow may be too late." "What do you mean?" "He intends to leave Jamaica Inn tonight." "Are you telling me the truth?" "Why should I lie to you now?" Jem was silent. The news had clearly come as a surprise to him. She was thrown back now on her old suspicion of him. He was the visitor expected by her uncle, and therefore hated by him and feared. The face of the peddler returned to her, and his words that had stung Jos Merlin to anger. "Listen here, Jos Merlin. Do you take your orders from someone above you?" The man whose brains made use of the landlord's strength. The man who had hidden in the empty room. Leaning forward suddenly, he looked into her face and touched the long cut that ran from her forehead to her chin. "Who did these?" he said, turning now to the mark on her cheek. She paused a moment and then answered him. "I got them on Christmas Eve." The look in his eye told her that he understood and had knowledge of the evening, and because of it was here now at Jamaica Inn. "You were with them, on the shore," he whispered. "Why did you go with them?" "They were crazy with drink. I don't think they knew what they were doing. I could no more have stood against them than a child. There were 10 of them or more. And my uncle, he led them. He and the peddler. If you know about it, why do you ask me? Don't make me remember. I don't want to remember." "How much did they hurt you?" "You can see for yourself. I tried to escape and I hurt my side. They caught me again, of course. They tied my hands and feet and tied a cloth over my mouth so that I could not cry out. I saw the ship come through the darkness, and I could do nothing, alone there in the wind and the rain. I had to watch them die. She stopped, her voice trembling, her face in her hands. He made no move towards her, and she felt him far from her, wrapped in secrecy. She felt lonelier than ever. "Was it my brother who hurt you most?" he said after a while. It was too late. It did not matter now. "I've told you he was very drunk. You know better than I, perhaps, what he can do then." "Yes, I know." He paused for a moment, and then he took her hand. "He shall die for this. His death will not bring back the men he has killed. I'm not thinking of them now. If you're thinking of me, don't waste your sympathy. I can deal with it in my own way. I've learnt one thing: to depend on myself." "What do you intend to do?" "He expects me to go with him, and Aunt Patience as well. If I asked you to do something, how would you answer me?" He smiled then, for the first time, as he had done in Lanson, and her heart warmed, encouraged at the change. "How can I tell?" he said. "I want you to go away from here." "I'm going now." "No, I mean away from the moors, away from Jamaica Inn. I want you to tell me you won't return here. I can stand up against your brother. I'm in no danger from him now. I don't want you to come here tomorrow. Please promise me you'll go away." "What have you got in mind?" "Something which does not concern you, but might bring you into danger. I can't say any more. I would rather you trusted me." "Trust you? Of course I trust you. It's you who won't trust me, you little fool." He laughed silently, and bent down to her, putting his arms round her, and kissed her then as he had kissed her in Lanson, but with anger. "Play your own game by yourself then, and leave me to play mine. If you must be a boy, I can't stop you. But keep that face, which I have kissed and shall kiss again, away from danger. You don't want to kill yourself, do you? I have to leave you now. It will be light in less than an hour. And if both our plans go wrong, what then? Would you mind if you never saw me again?" "No, of course you wouldn't care. You'll marry a farmer one day, or a small tradesman, and live quietly among your neighbours. Don't tell them you once lived at Jamaica Inn, or had a horse thief make love to you. They'd shut their doors against you. Goodbye, and good luck to you." He lowered himself to the ground. She watched him from the window, waving to him, but he had turned and gone without looking back at her, crossing the yard like a shadow. Morning would soon be here. She would not sleep again. She sat on her bed, waiting for her door to be unlocked, and she made her plans for the evening to come. She must act as if she were prepared to make the planned journey with the landlord and Aunt Patience. Later, she would make some excuse, a desire to rest in her room before the journey perhaps, and then would come the most dangerous moment of her day. She would have to leave Jamaica Inn secretly and run to Alternun. Francis Davy would understand. Time would be against them, and he would have to act quickly. She would then return to the inn and hope that her absence had remained unnoticed. That was the risk. If the landlord went to her room and found her gone, her life would be worth nothing. She must be prepared for that. No excuse would save her then. But if he believed her to be sleeping The game would continue. They would make preparations for the journey. They might even climb into the wagon and come out on the road. After that, her responsibility would end. Whatever happened next would be in the hands of the Vicar of Alternun. Beyond this, she could not think, nor had she any great desire to look ahead. When she had helped them clear the midday meal away and had persuaded her aunt to pack a basket of food for the journey, she turned to her uncle and spoke to him. "If we are to travel tonight, would it not be better if Aunt Patience and I rested now during the afternoon, so we could start out fresh on the journey? There will be no sleep for any of us tonight." "You may rest if you like. There'll be work for both of you later. You're right when you say there will be no sleep for you tonight. Go then. I shall be glad to get rid of you for a time." Mary entered her own little room and closed the door, turning the key. Her heart beat fast at the thought of adventure. It was nearly 4 miles to Alternun by road, but she could walk the distance in an hour. If she left Jamaica Inn at 4 o'clock, when the light was failing, she would be back again soon after 6, and the landlord would be unlikely to come to wake her up before 7. She had 3 hours then in which to play her part. She would climb out of the window and drop to the ground, as Jem had done. She sat by the window, looking out on the empty yard and the high road where no one ever passed, waiting for the clock in the hall to strike 4. When it struck at last, the sound rang out in the silence. Every second was important to her now, and she must waste no time in going. She climbed through the window. The jump was nothing, as she had thought. She looked up at Jamaica Inn. It looked evil in the half-darkness, the windows barred. She thought of the terrible things the house had witnessed, the secrets now shut up behind its walls, and she turned away from it, as from a house of the dead, and went out on the road. Darkness fell as she walked. She came at last to where the roads divided, and she turned to her left, down the steep hill to Alternun. The vicar's house was silent. There were no lights there. She turned back towards the church. Francis Davy would be there, of course. It was Sunday. She stopped for a moment, uncertain what to do. Then the gate opened, and a woman came out into the road carrying flowers. She looked hard at Mary, knowing her to be a stranger, and would have passed her by with a good night, but Mary turned. "Forgive me," she said. "I see you have come from the church. Can you tell me if Mr. Davy is there?" "No, he is not," said the woman. And then after a moment, "Did you want to see him?" "Very urgently," said Mary. "Can you help me?" The woman looked at her strangely, and then she shook her head firmly. "I'm sorry," she said. "The vicar's away. He went to hold a service in another village, many miles from here. He is not expected back in Alternun tonight."